What's up, everyone? James and Ben here for Odds Checker US. We're going to be previewing Saturday's UFC London card, which goes down at the O2 Arena. Pretty stacked fight night card, if I say so myself. We're going to start, as always, on the main card. It's going to be Paul Craig taking on Volkan Ozdemir. And right now, the odds makers have Volkan as the slight favorite at -150. The comeback on Paul Craig, +125. Ben, which way are you going on this one?
This one, oh boy, this is one of the hardest of the night to call for me because I honestly love Paul Craig. He's obviously a submission specialist, lots of wins by submission, excellent Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But then you look on the other side, Ozdemir, I mean, he's got great hands, one of the harder hitters in the division, and he's fought an extremely high level of competition inside the UFC. I mean, you look at his fights, and Magomed Ankalaev, Yuri Prochazka, who he actually outlanded Yuri, the current champ, in that fight before he got caught with that knockout. So, I mean, he looked pretty good in that fight before he got caught. And he's fought, the best of the best. Dominic Reyes lost a split there. Daniel Cormier for the title back in 2018. So he's fought just an insanely high level of competition. So Paul Craig in this fight, if he can keep it standing, which I think Ozdemir can, I think he should win this fight just because his hands are so much better. But, Paul Craig, it's almost hard to say that anyone can do that against Paul Craig because no matter how good his takedown defense is, Craig submitted Magomed Ankalaev, and that was his only loss ever in professional MMA. So, I mean, you look at that and you say, I mean, that's a tough aspect to just say, oh, no, don't worry. Ozdemir will keep the fight standing. Because, I mean, this guy can sub literally the best of the best. So it's so 50-50 in my eyes, and it probably should be a little closer as far as the odds go. But I will take Ozdemir because I think his takedown defense is really good. So if he can keep it standing, and he's kept a lot of these good wrestlers to only like one takedown in these fights. So I think if he can probably land enough damage on the feet to win a decision or maybe knock him out.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You've always got that submission threat with Paul Craig, but Volkan Ozdemir is a much better fighter. Let's also not forget the last fight that Craig had against Nikita Krylov, who we'll talk about a little bit later on this card. Krylov was winning that fight. It was like, I don't want to call it a Hail Mary, but I mean, Paul Craig just had him in one bad position close to the end of the round and ended up submitting him. And he does that to a lot of guys. So that's why it's concerning. And Ozdemir does have submission losses, but I spoke to Ozdemir before this fight. I know that he actually moved his entire camp and everything to Sweden. He's training at All-Stars with Khamzat Chimaev and Alexander Gustafsson. I love that move for him. I think that's one of the things he's been lacking is a really good camp. So I'm with you. I think he keeps this fight standing, and I think Volkan wins this fight. I might look at the Volkan by decision prop. It's only a 3-round fight. If it does stay standing, I could see him outland him. Volkan typically not finishing a lot of his opponents. I know he knocked out Latifi, but Craig seems to be pretty durable. I could see that happening. So maybe going Ozdemir by decision, hedge that maybe with the Craig by submission, because Craig's not winning a decision here. Craig's not winning by knockout. If Craig wins this fight, it'll be by submission. So if you can get a little creative with the odds and hedge it a little bit here, but yeah, the pick's going to be Volkan Ozdemir by decision to get it done over Paul Craig. Okay, let's look at the next fight here. Molly McCann taking on Hannah Goldy. And right now, Molly McCann, a huge favorite at -400. The comeback in Goldy, +310. Which way are you going on this one?
This one was very interesting to me because you look at, obviously the line is very high in McCann, but you look at her past fights. Every single fight inside the UFC, she has been at a reach disadvantage. And most recently, against Carolina, 7-inch reach disadvantage. And then against Kim, 10-inch reach disadvantage. She won both of those fights. She knocked out Carolina. So, I mean, it's very interesting to see. She's almost kind of learned how to deal with that reach disadvantage because she has very good head movement. She is obviously a very powerful striker because what she lacks in height, she makes up for in her power. But in this fight, this is the first time she does not have to deal with that because she actually has a 1-inch reach advantage here. That's something very interesting to me because it's kind of almost changed her fight style, being at such reach disadvantage. But you look on the other side, and Goldie's actually short herself for the division. So she's actually floated between 115 and 125. So I think that's maybe the most interesting part of this fight, just to see McCann finally fighting someone who she doesn't have to worry about, getting in her own range, whereas they kind of have the same range in this fight. So I think for that reason, also with her power, not having to worry about that reach disadvantage, it's going to be something that really helps her excel in this fight. And it's not necessarily out of the box to say, oh, McCann's going to win. She's -400. But I do think she takes care of business here. Maybe take decision just to bring that down a little bit. I know she just won by knockout, but I mean, you don't see a lot of, she doesn't have a lot of knockouts besides for that. She has 5 on the record, but only 1 in the UFC so far. So I think maybe take her by decision just to bring that line down a little bit.
Once again, we're on the same page here. I completely agree. That last fight, it actually burned me. I did have Molly McCann by decision in her last fight, ended up biting me in the butt. But that's not usual for Molly McCann to finish a fight. She's a grinder. She'll get in your face, and the stakes are high here. I mean, she's a huge favorite. This is in the UK. Like, she's got to win. She's got to perform. She's got her teammate Paddy Pimlet on the card too. Like, there's a lot of pressure here for her to win. And this was strategically done by the UFC. I don't think they're very high on Hanny Goldy, so you give her Molly McCann. I know McCann personally. I know she was offered other opponents, and they settled on Goldy, and I think there's a reason for that. So I think if you're going to play this fight at all, take Molly McCann by decision. Goldy can be finished, though. Obviously, you mentioned the fact that it's not a case of McCann fighting someone that's got a longer reach or anything, but I think that's a relatively safe bet here, and you're not betting the minus 400. I personally don't think it's worth it to parlay Molly McCann at minus 400. I just, again, I think if you're going anything past, 3-1, 2-1, you're not getting much value there. So I think the decision prop is good, or even the over in this fight, because again, I could see both of them, go into the scorecard. So the pick's gonna be Molly McCann, but I would take that decision prop in that fight too. Okay, let's mention him earlier. Nikita Krylov, Alexander Gustafsson.
Yep.
Right now, the odds makers have Krylov as the favorite at minus 190, Gustafsson plus 160. Are you going with the veteran, the aging vet in Gustafsson, or are you going with Krylov here?
I'm gonna go Krylov. This guy, second stint now in the UFC, and he was absolutely thrown to the wolves. Got Jan Blachowicz, Obis St. Preux, Glover Teixeira. Finally got a little bit of a break in Johnny Walker, because that was a very winnable fight for him. Magomed Ankalaev, Paul Craig, which could have been a winnable fight. And like you said, he was winning before that submission. But, he's fought, some of the best since being back in the UFC. And I finally think this is a very winnable fight for him, simply because maybe if this was Gustafsson back in the day, I would take it. But, he's been retiring, unretiring. Then he tried going heavyweight, got subbed against Werdum. Now he's back down to light heavyweight. He hasn't fought in 2 years, let alone his last win was 5 years ago. So, I don't know if I'm necessarily high on taking the guy, even at dog odds, to win when he hasn't shown us that he has that, fire back in him. Maybe if he comes out and wins against Krylov, maybe in the next fight. But I think this is a winnable fight for Krylov, against an aging vet, a guy who's been, retiring, unretiring. He's just trying heavyweight now. It kind of seems like he's just doing whatever he needs to. And I think this is not a gimme for Krylov, but it's one of the more winnable fights he's had since he's been in his second stint in the UFC, besides that fight against Johnny Walker. So I like him a lot in this fight. I think he's the better grappler. Maybe he can take him down and use that as his path to victory. But it's hard because he's at minus 200. So it's like it's hard to say whether you take him straight or not. Maybe I'll throw him in a parlay.
I'm staying away from this fight. I like Krylov too. He's younger, he's more active, but this guy is so inconsistent. And I know you talked about the level of opposition. That is one thing we can't just glance over, but I just feel like you can never get a good read on him. He has the good win over Walker, and then he has some other losses. Like, it's just really tough to gauge how good this guy is. And you're almost taking a guess with Gustafsson as well. Like, we know the credentials, what he's done, but are we going to get, the 2014 version of Alexander Gustafsson? I don't think we are, but maybe he has looked good. Maybe this time off is good. He's finally at the right weight class, back at light heavyweight, because he fought that Verdum fight at heavyweight. We could see a surprise here. I don't know. I just personally, there's no way I'm betting this fight. I don't even think there's value on the dog here, because again, Gustafsson looked so bad in his last fight. And then, the add in the layoff, and then with Krylov, like, he's almost minus 200. If this was closer to a pick 'em, I might consider betting Krylov, but I'm just going to pick him anyways. But yeah, no bet for me on this fight. I'm just going to stay away and just enjoy the popcorn on that one. Okay. We got Paddy Pimlet and Jordan Levitt next. And of course, Pimlet, a moderate favorite here at minus 260 to come back and leave it plus 210. Are you going with the Paddy train here, Ben?
I don't know. I'm probably going to stay off this fight for the show's sake. Sure, I'll say Pimlet just because he probably should win this fight. Levitt he will be a much better grappler here. I will say that. I don't know about much better, but he will be, I think he has the advantage in the grappling department. If he can get it there, I think Pimblet's a very strong fighter. So I don't know. I think his takedown defense should look good. If this stays in the feet, Pimlet should just be able to, touch him up and either win it on the scorecards or maybe finish him late. This is kind of the biggest test for either guy to date, because neither one of them have really fought anyone that I'm super high on. So it's kind of both of their biggest tests. We're seeing this is a test for Pimlet, sure, because he's finally fighting a little bit better fighter, but it's definitely a bigger test for Levitt, who, I don't know. He's a big dog in this fight, and I think this line has been heavily inflated just by the public's perception of Pimlet. They're driving the price up on him. Sometimes you see that where those popular fighters on social media, they kind of drive the price up. So I don't know if Levitt should be plus 210, just because we haven't seen that marquee win from Pimlet yet. Maybe this could be it. I don't know, in his hometown or home country. But I don't know. I think this is a stay away from me. The line is just too high and it's inflated in my opinion. So nothing really for me.
Well, I mentioned Molly McCann, the UFC strategically giving her a certain opponent. It's the same thing here. What's Jordan Levitt? He's a submission guy. He does have one, I guess, TKO win technically over Matt Wyman. It was a slam. It was just a very odd fight. But this guy doesn't have a single legit like TKO knockout win in his career, and that was strategically done. And I know Pimblet's never been knocked out, but he gets hit a lot. Even his debut against Luigi Vendramini. Even Bisping brought it up post-fight. He's like, look, man, you ran into a little bit of trouble earlier. And even his last fight that he had over Vargas, he got hit a bit in that one too. And both those guys aren't in the UFC anymore. So you got to point that out too. But Pimlet should win. No way I'm betting minus 260. No. Maybe you look at the decision prop if you think that, Levitt's a little bit durable. But Pimblet's striking is very good, but he does get hit a lot. But Levitt's not the guy who's going to knock him out. I'd be shocked by that. I think I'll probably just end up staying away as well. But like I said, the UFC likes this guy. They're giving him sort of the Sean O'Malley treatment of giving him, sort of a slow build up. That's why they didn't. Because look, I said this on another show. Like, if they gave Pimlet a even a decent striker, like even like an Alex Hernandez, who I think has really fallen out of favor with the UFC. Hernandez still has knockout power. That to me is a more dangerous fight than this fight because he's not fighting a knockout artist. So the pick's going to be Pimlet, but no way I'm betting this fight. I just don't see a good path, and I don't think Levitt is going to be able to get this to the ground and submit him either. So the pick's going to be Pimlet.
Well, yeah, and like you said, Pimlet's been leaving his chin really high in some of these fights. It's almost like he's fighting like cocky. I mean, he kind of is. He's a very confident fighter, but yeah, his chin has definitely been left high in a few of the fights, and his hands are low. It's almost like he doesn't care about the striking defense because he doesn't think he'll be knocked out. But yeah, I mean, Levitt's not the guy to knock him out. So you're right there.
Co-main event. You're supposed to be Jack Hermansson, Darren Till. Insert Chris Curtis. What an opportunity. This guy is Mr. Opportunity the last couple fights, all short notice. Well, except for the last one against Vieira, but you understand that this guy's got a couple short notice opportunities and he's done well. And right now, Chris Curtis is the favorite at minus 120. The comeback on the Joker is plus 100. Who are you going with here?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to tell me that Jack Hermansson would be minus 110 against Chris Curtis, a pick'em basically against Chris Curtis like a year or two ago, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, that'll never happen. But I mean, here we are, Chris Curtis. I mean, he's been thrown basically. I mean, he hasn't fought a very high level striker, in my opinion. Because I mean, Phil Haas, yes, he has all those knockout wins, but he's predominantly a wrestler. Kind of St. Brendan Allen, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has decent striking, but I mean, Jack Hermansson will be the best striker he has faced yet to date. And I think this is going to be a really good test for him on the feet. Because I mean, he got those two great knockouts that went against Vieira, but he's a submission guy. He's a grappler himself. So I mean, he's been fighting a bunch of these wrestler grapplers. And I think this is going to be a massive step up in competition for him. And I think that this line is just way too low on Hermansson. I mean, Hermansson, he has some great wins over the best of the best. And I know he's coming off that split decision loss against Sean Strickland, which probably shouldn't have been a split decision, probably should have been unanimous, but he has great wins as well. So I think getting him after he's 1-2 in his last 2 or 3, I should say, is a great spot because I think this line has come down a little bit just because he has those losses now. But I mean, they were to Marvin Vettori and Sean Strickland, who are 2 very good fighters. And I think this is a much more winnable fight for him. And he also hasn't lost back-to-back in a long time, not inside the UFC. The last time he lost back-to-back was on the regional scene. So, I mean, he always bounces back very good after a loss. I think we see a bounce-back performance from him. I'm going to be taking Hermansson here.
Finally, we're going the other way on something. I agree with everything you said. Like, I do think that Hermansson, being an underdog is a little bit weird if you look at sort of the optics of it. But there's a theory out there, and I subscribe to this theory, that I think you're seeing a bit of a regression here with Hermansson. Like, even that win over Edmund Shabazian, he started out really slow in that fight, and he ended up winning because Shabazian, as we know, the last couple of fights is just after round 2, it seems like he's done. If he can't get you out there early, he tends to fade a bit. Hermansson's actually got a really good ground game, and if you remember his last finish, if I'm not mistaken, was against Calvin Gastelum, which you don't see that happening often. So I would almost argue that this could be more of a ground fight. But the thing is, Chris Curtis has never been submitted, and he's got good takedown defense. And who's one of Chris Curtis's best friends, one of his main sparring partners, is Sean Strickland. And I know they're different fighters, but to have that insight in fighting a guy like Jack, I think that's something that's very valuable here. I just think, Curtis has been given another golden opportunity here. He does not, if he loses this fight, it's not a big deal. He's fighting well up in the rankings. He's on a nice winning streak, but I just think the expectation for Curtis has kind of been like he's playing with house money. Whereas Hermansson, like he needs to win this. You mentioned he's never lost back-to-back. I don't think he's exactly letting the world on fire with some of his wins. And this reminds me a tiny bit, and I know they're different fighters, but when he fought Jared Cannonier, where it was a sort of a stay busy fight, it was in Hermansson's hometown, and Cannonier went there and knocked him out in the second round. I could see Curtis putting on that same type of pressure like he did against Brendan Allen, like he did against Phil Hawes, where he could potentially finish this fight here. But I just think it's a very dangerous combination when you got a guy in Curtis who has nothing to lose and Hermansson has everything to lose here. And remember, he was supposed to fight Darren Till before, and you talked about the Vettori loss. That actually went, if you remember, it was supposed to be Till, then Kevin Holland, then they settled on Vettori, and he broke his orbital bone in that first round and ended up losing that fight. So Hermansson just had some terrible luck. He also had COVID, I know, last year, and I know he wasn't fully recovered from that, so maybe there's that still lingering too. I get where you're coming from, but I got to take Curtis here. I just think the momentum's on his side, and I think Hermansson's a guy that's going to be fighting, a lot harder to try and get the win there. But I think Curtis can either win a decision or maybe a knockout here. I could see it similar to Cannonier. Obviously, Chris Curtis does not have the power that Jared Cannonier does, but this does seem like a fight where you could pressure Hermansson and he could fold. So I'm going to take Chris Curtis here. No bet from me. Just going to watch this one as a fan. All right, main event. Really curious about your pick on this one. Curtis Blaydes and Tom Aspinall. Love this matchmaking here, veteran versus prospect. And right now, it is the UK-based fighter, Tom Aspinall, -135. The comeback from Curtis Blaydes, +115. Which way are you going on this one?
Yeah, this one's another really hard one that I think, just like you said about Chris Curtis, I might just not bet on this and sit back and watch. I got burned on Ortega on the main event last week, and the main events I like to kind of not have action on, just to watch them, just because they're the biggest fight of the night and stuff. But I think I'm gonna have to do that here. If you had to make me pick, because it's the picking show, I'll take Blaydes, just because I think he is the best wrestler that Aspinall will have faced yet. And I mean, he's one of the best wrestlers, if not the best wrestler at heavyweight. But then on the other side, you have Aspinall, who's a very well-rounded fighter. He throws very high volume, but he also has a very, very good submission game on the ground. In his third fight in the UFC, he took Andrei Arlovski, who has been submitted once in 50 fights that he had up to that point, and then he submitted him. The man basically never gets submitted, and then Aspinall submitted him in only his third UFC fight. So he's a very dangerous fighter, even on the ground. So, if Blaydes takes him down and he's able to land a reversal, maybe he can take his back or something. But Blaydes is very good with his top pressure. So I think this could be very back and forth. And I'm interested to see it when or if Aspinall is taken down, how he responds if he is able to get that reversal. Because, Blaydes is going to be shooting the whole fight. But then there's that aspect where, Blaydes was shooting against Derek Lewis, got him down the first, and then the second when he went to go shoot, and then all of a sudden, boom, uppercut, and he's knocked out. So, there's two very interesting narratives here to this fight, and I think it's too hard for me to actually place a bet on it. But I think as long as Blaydes doesn't shoot willy-nilly and, get knocked out like he did against Lewis, making that mistake, that he can probably win this on the scorecards, because we've never really seen Aspinall go super far into a fight, especially into the fifth. I think it's only his second 5-round fight inside the UFC, and his first one, he ended it in the first round. So in those fourth and fifth rounds, we know Blaydes' cardio is going to be there. I'm not so sure about Aspinall, but Aspinall's the more dangerous fighter. So could go either way, but just for the show's sake, I'll say Blaydes.
Yeah, this is really tough for me. I know Curtis very well. I'm very high on Curtis. I think a lot of the fans give Curtis way too much grief, call him boring, all this stuff. The guy got a highlight reel finish in his last fight over a very tough guy in Chris Daukaus here. With all that said, though, I do like Tom Aspinall here. There's every now and then, Ben, there's certain fighters you watch and you see something special in them. And Yuri Prochazka comes to mind. Alex Pereira with what he's been able to do with his striking. Aspinall, I think, fits that bill. And the fight that did it for me was his last fight against Volkov. Like, I get it. Volkov's been finished before Derek Lewis finished him. He knocked him out. But the way Aspinall just handled a guy in Volkov, and then we saw what Volkov did in his last fight, still showing that he's still a decent heavyweight in that weight class. To me, that was enough proof of this guy and his ceiling and stuff. And the thing I worry about here is the speed for Tom Aspinall. I think it could be a factor against Curtis Blaydes in this fight. I think the longer this fight goes, that favors Blaydes. I would recommend that. I think a Blaydes by decision prop may not be the worst thing in the world, just because, again, I know it's 5 rounds, but, Blaydes, I could see him taking it deep waters, although you are at risk of maybe getting a late finish here. but I think it's an Aspinall with an early finish. If I were to bet this fight, I would maybe look at an Aspinall first or probably not first round, but maybe second round or third round finish. I could see that happening, but I think Aspinall is going to clip him at some point. I do. I just think I think we're going to learn a lot about him. Maybe I'm overrating this guy a little bit, but I just feel like he could potentially knock out Blades here, because again, we've seen Blades get knocked out against Derek Lewis, twice against Ngannou. It's definitely possible. Now those guys have more power than Tom Aspinall does, but I could see the speed being a factor where he clips him here. And I do think Aspinall is very special here. So I'm kind of taking a bit of a, not a guess, but just like kind of having my expectations pretty high here for Aspinall and thinking he can do it. So I'm going to take Aspinall, but like I said, maybe there's some props there that might be a little bit better, because I don't think it's a slam dunk win for Aspinall. Honest to God, next week we could be talking about a Curtis Blades decision win, and that would not shock me in the slightest, because he's got the wrestling, he's got the experience, he's fought way better opposition, and for the most part, he does win most of his fights, and not named Francis Ngannou or Derek Lewis. So pick's going to be Aspinall, but no, I'd say I'm about 60% confident that Aspinall gets it done. I think it's going to be a very close fight regardless. So I thought
that brings up to me though. I will say, I'm not sure. I don't bet these very often, but with how we were both talking about the fight, I think one of the best bets would maybe be a Curtis Blades decision only. One of those bets where if it ends inside the distance, it's voided. I'm not sure the odds on that. It's probably still plus money since he's the underdog, but that would be a very interesting bet, because then if it goes to decision, I don't really see Aspinall winning a decision here just because of those championship rounds. He might lose the 4th and 5th. So that'd be a really interesting bet if you want to back Blades, because I don't really see Blades finishing Aspinall here either. So, but either way, it would be voided if one of them does finish. So interesting bet there.
For sure. All right. Hope everyone enjoys the card. It's an earlier one this Saturday. Just got to remind people, the London card starts at 12 p.m. Eastern time. That's 9 a.m. Pacific time. So just set your alarms a little bit early, but great card. You don't want to miss it. For myself, for Ben, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week.